After his one-off performance for Mercedes, Mick Schumacher, one of the grid favorites, has finally received some wonderful news. For the son of Michael Schumacher, one of the all-time greats of the sport, this may be the beginning of a significant turnaround. Mick Schumacher called his first on-track experience as a Mercedes Formula One reserve driver epic, despite the fact that it was just a Pirelli tire test. And epic could just be what Mick needs to prove to the grid how valuable he is. Could the young German passenger ride again in the following year? It's great now being really embedded in the team, having driven the car, knowing what it's all about, he added. Throughout the Grand Prix this year, Schumacher has been a visible presence in the Mercedes garage. The official Mercedes reserve was called in for Wednesday's second day of testing by Pirelli in Barcelona, as testing on tires without blanket heating continues. Schumacher completed 152 laps during the run, which was his first opportunity to operate the W14 since joining the German team. Formula One is a high-stakes, high-pressure sport that calls for a certain blend of ability, skill, and resiliency. Because of this, many drivers invest years advancing through the ranks of amateur racing circuits, developing their abilities and establishing their reputations. The competition is intense, and even the smallest error or tiny mistake may be expensive. Rookies are typically under a lot of pressure and must certainly establish their value, especially in the first 2 years. Being a Schumacher means being constantly compared to his father, and many anticipate him to do similarly. That is a lot of pressure, and I believe that throughout his 2 years at Haas, he was subjected to a great deal of it, which may have led to his failure. After being replaced by Nico Hülkenberg from Haas's race lineup for 2023 after 2 years, he made a good first impression on the team with his professionalism. Toto Wolff, the team's team principal, said this week that he has done a great job with the team so far, working hard back in the simulator and giving valuable input trackside. That is not just the boss's standard platitude. Lewis Hamilton was in trouble last Friday during practice for the Spanish Grand Prix and was concerned he wouldn't make Q3. He not only succeeded in doing so, but he also came in second, which was his best competition result of the year. Mercedes had their best weekend of 2023 thanks to a setup adjustment that came about as a result of Schumacher's simulator session on Friday night. Anything that helps behind the scenes is acceptable. Schumacher, though, is just 24 years old. His F1 racing career to far has consisted of blitzing an underwhelming fellow rookie colleague in a very terrible car for 1 year, then crashing a lot and getting dropped when paired against a more experienced adversary in year 2. He is a Formula 3 and Formula 2 champion and the son of a legend. Let's quickly review Mick's relationship with Haas. Mick struggled in his first year at Haas, recording 0 points throughout the 2021 campaign. He had trouble with the car and the team's lack of vigor, frequently coming in at the rear of the grid. As Mick's teammate in 2022, Haas added Kevin Magnussen in lieu of Nikita Mazepin. Magnussen outqualified Mick by 16.6, and as a result of his inability to match the speed and racing style of his colleague, Mick routinely fell behind in races as the finish line approached. Although he placed 9th at Silverstone and ended 6th at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, Schumacher did have remarkable promise and score consecutive victories to collect his maiden F1 points. He also fought with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. But that was all for the rest of the year in terms of tangible results. By the conclusion of the season, Magnussen's 25 points, which he scored on 7 different occasions, had surpassed Mick's 12 points. Schumacher's contract with Haas was not extended after the 2022 season. Toto Wolff, the team principal of Mercedes, did not think Mick had a decent car at Haas, and because he was aware of his potential, he wasted no time in making an offer to the German to be the team's backup driver. Wolff said that if Mick Schumacher's father, Michael Schumacher, had been present in the paddocks, Gunther would have treated Mick better. Wolff said, "I'm looking out for the little one. I can only say that his parents did nothing wrong in bringing him up, and I claim that if Michael had accompanied his son during the 2 Haas years, Steiner would not have dared to treat Mick like that." Of course, Gunther had something to say back. He said, "What I have to say is, if my father would have been around, Toto wouldn't have said the things he said." He added, "It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to manage that one because there was a lot of pressure from outside because of his last name. Then, obviously, he had the big crashes, which was very difficult to manage as well for the team because it was big damage. which again you need to refocus your budget on different things, as now with the budget cap you need to invest money in performance. It wasn't easy, but racing is not easy, and coming up for young guys in Formula One is very tough. And nobody deserves to be in Formula One. You need to perform. Mick doesn't want the story to come to this conclusion. It wasn't only about maintaining one's foot in Formula One. Finding a path back onto the grid was another reason to join Mercedes. A stand-in appearance is the most obvious immediate possibility, especially in light of the way teams using Mercedes engines pool their reserves. Nick DeVries, who was ostensibly a Mercedes test driver last year, ended up driving for Williams and was ready to drive for McLaren when Lando Norris got sick before the Brazilian GP. But his AlphaTauri season hasn't been great, so DeVries isn't a great marketing tool for giving a driver a full-time chance based on an admittedly brilliant super sub appearance somewhere. For what turned out to be an exciting Bahrain 2020 testing, Mercedes decided to replace the designated reserve Stoffel Van Dorn with George Russell from Williams. Schumacher is not in danger of being missed in the same way because the team has made it clear that he would be called up in the event that Russell or Lewis Hamilton were unable to compete. Additionally, there is no one in the Mercedes junior pipeline who would be a better option than him as a Grand Prix replacement. The same is likely to be true for Mercedes customer teams McLaren, which has already stated that it could call on Schumacher, and Williams, but not for fellow Mercedes engine runner Aston Martin, which has reigning F2 champion Felipe Drugovich on hand and would have used him for the Bahrain GP if Lance Stroll hadn't been able to compete due to his cycling injury. In 2024, Schumacher will primarily confront closed doors aside from bench duty. While Schumacher is earning Mercedes' respect, he is still a long way from being the obvious choice to replace a 7-time world champion in the event of a last-minute contract discussion bombshell. Hamilton is almost certain to stay. The doors to McLaren and Aston Martin are also now closed since their drivers' contracts are valid through the next year. Thus, it is assumed that the Mercedes family is his greatest chance. Williams was suggested as Schumacher's greatest opportunity to impress a potential 2024 employer, as well as a spot for 2023 last year. But that was dependent on either Logan Sargent failing to the point where he was only granted 1 year, or Alex Albon being signed by a more competitive team. Now, neither scenario seems plausible. Schumacher could have thought ahead and positioned himself to be the ideal candidate for an Audi seat in 2026. The danger of joining a large manufacturer for an F1 debut it has had lots of lead time on, however, may look alluring to ambitious, proven, or future race winners who feel they've ended up treading water at the big teams they committed to while Ferrari and McLaren falter. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz have consequently been cited as potential Audi prospects. The line for an Audi opportunity may get quite long for Schumacher. If he will have a seat next year is still up in the air. Although he is extremely optimistic and close to obtaining one, anything is possible in Formula One. All we can do is wait and see. Do you believe he ought to return to the grid the following year? How else would he perform in a vehicle superior to the Haas? Please share your thoughts in the comments below and remember to subscribe to our channel for more Formula One information. I'll see you later.